Welcome to the Hot Girl School, the podcast where we redefine confidence and go way beyond the reflection you see in the mirror.
We're your hosts, Lauren and Danielle, here to empower you to embrace your inner radiance because confidence is so much more than looks.
Whether you're strutting into an event or conquering the boardroom, join us as we explore topics like self-love, inner strength, and owning your unique journey to confidence.
So grab your favorite drinkie and turn up that volume because you're about to unleash your true potential.
Hey, hotties, welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're talking about something that can feel a little intimidating, but is absolutely crucial to both personal and professional growth: connecting and networking. Whether you're attending a business event, trying to make new friends, or showing up to a wedding where you know absolutely no one, in this episode, we have got you covered. We're going to dive into how to connect with people, how to start easy conversations, and how to be interested is the absolute key in becoming the most interesting person in the room.
Welcome in, girls. We are so excited to talk about this one. Danielle and I have quite an extensive background on connection and network, and we're excited to share with you what we've learned through trial and error over the years.
And if you're anything like I used to be, when it comes to like professional networking, I used to be like, oh, I'm going to be so drained. We're going to fix that. You don't have to feel drained. You can walk in with a game plan, knowing what to do, and make meaningful connections. So, why don't we start by talking about why connection matters and why it's so important?
Nobody wants to be abandoned. Nobody wants to be ignored. Everybody wants to feel seen and heard. And connection is important. It can help you with your friendships. It can help you with your business. And to find people who you have a lot in common with, you align with, there's just like a whole different type of high that comes with it. And then you're there for each other and have the ability to support them.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I feel like connection is like rooted in everything that we are as human beings, right? Like we want to feel connected to something. Genuine, healthy connections can really open amazing doors for you. They can make you feel more fulfilled. In fact, I follow this doctor, Dr. Amy Shaw, and I came across this awesome meme she posted the other day with Jane Fonda. And it talked about the importance of having female friends specifically and how not having good, genuine connections with female friends can be as bad for your health as smoking.
Who would have thought that those two could correlate? I mean, it kind of goes into being abandoned and ignored. I
Yeah.
guess in a way, kind of goes together. All right, so
Yeah.
we're here to help you get those connections going strong and off the ground with old girlfriends and new girlfriends.
Yeah. So we're going to cover like a game plan. And I think one thing that's so important to note is that connecting is not about being the loudest person in the room, the most accomplished, the me person. It's truly about being genuinely interested in others and making it more about them, less about you. How can you support them? What can you learn from them, and figuring out if the connection is real for you and then building from there. So let's start with like, how do you game plan for connection at, say, an event?
I have a friend who makes it look so easy. He can walk up to a group of 10 people sitting at a table standing in a group, and he just walks up and he just so genuinely and not threatening at all, just introduces himself. He will go around the entire room. Somehow he has a magical memory and can remember every single person's name. And I love watching him in action because it's taught me a lot that I notice when I walk into a room, I still very much am like, okay, be nice, smile, but don't be fake. Like I'm kind of coaching myself as I walk
Sure.
in because it still is intimidating no matter what. And obviously having a glass of alcohol eases that, but I don't want to have to rely on that. So it is coming up with some questions that you know other people will be responsive. Oh, excuse me, that other people will be responsive to. So a good one is giving a compliment. Walk up
Yeah.
to a girl, a guy, it's probably a little easier girl to girl and like, "Oh my gosh, I love your nail polish. I love your shoes. I love your outfit." And it will excite them. They just received a compliment. It opens the door and it disarms them.
Yep, absolutely. Compliments are my favorite, and they're so easy to do because all you have to do is look around and see something you like and then say it out loud, right?
And
So
you're making someone feel good. We love that. We love
yeah,
compliments.
absolutely. And I think that, as far as like game planning goes, if you're going in and you know no one, what I like to do is like set a goal because you're not going to like, I just went to a conference where there was 80 people there. I'm not going to have like a deep conversation with 80 people in one day, right? That I've never met before. So I made a game plan. My game plan was I want to genuinely connect with 3 people and have a deep conversation with at least 3 people. And so having that intention allowed me to kind of like read the room and see and find things like, oh, I like her outfit, or I like her style. I like the way she speaks when she had the hot mic moment. I like her story. I want to talk to her more. So if you walk in with a little bit of a game plan, it takes the pressure off a bit, especially if you don't know anyone. On, okay, I don't have to connect with every single person in here, but I need to have a genuine experience with 3 of them or one of them, whatever works for you.
Correct. We're talking about quality over quantity. This is not a numbers game where you go and you try and like speed date through all of these people just to get to know everybody. We're talking like if you're having a conversation with someone and it's not working or you're not feeling it and you can kind of like I feel like my energy is like naturally drawn to someone else and I'll see somebody else in the room and I'm like I want to talk to them. And I don't know why. I don't
Yeah.
have a reason. I just want to talk to them. And
Because vibes
so
don't
to
lie. That's the reason. Vibes don't
totally
lie, girl.
and this takes confidence. Let's be very clear. Like going to something alone where you know nobody,
Yep.
especially for business, it's easier because you certainly have a crutch, which is you guys are all there for the same reason. But to go to a wedding or go to somebody's birthday party alone, that's a harder thing. So that's kind of what we're talking about here. And we strongly believe that having the ability to close a conversation kindly when you're like, all right, this is not really going anywhere, the connection's not there and following your vibe to the person who does because there is a reason that you're attracted to them, which is pretty much what you were saying. You get drawn into these deep
Yeah.
conversations and tell us how that goes.
Yeah, I mean, it's so you're finding that common ground, right? So you want to have open-ended questions when you start. Make eye contact with people, have a nice handshake. I'm a hugger, so I'm like, "Give me a hug. What's up?" Some people hate that, which is fine. It's just
And
who
other
I
people
am.
love it. They
And you
might
can
disarm them
decline it.
further.
If you haven't listened to our boundaries episode, great place to go if you feel like you can't be like, "I don't like to hug." That's cool. I'll respect that, right? But open-ended questions are going to be the absolute key to unlocking a deeper conversation. And it's super important that when you're asking those questions, you're not asking while in your mind thinking about what your reply is going to be to them. Like if you're anticipating what you're going to say next, you're not actively listening. And if you're not actively listening, you aren't going to have a genuine connection because all you're doing is thinking about yourself and what you're going to say next.
Ain't that the truth? You've also got the kind of response where you're like hoping that they're going to ask you something back. And that's not exactly cultivating or establishing this new friendship. When somebody's telling you a story, you want to genuinely ask questions that pertain to the story and not just try to rush them along to get the conversation because it can feel like an interview process if it's not genuine. And that's not what we're going for.
And you can really feel like having done so many networking events, you can spot the person that is like, "Ooh, I'm going to turn that one back around to me. Oh, that's my in. I'm waiting for it to turn the conversation over to me." And that's a bad vibe. Nobody likes that vibe. That's going to make you the least interesting person in the room because you're just there for yourself and it shows. So don't do
Right.
that.
Another negative is when you're talking to somebody and you're trying to connect with them and their eyes are darting everywhere and they're watching everyone else. That is so disrespectful in my opinion. I don't know how
Absolutely.
you feel. Okay, you feel the same. I just think that it's so rude. Like I'm trying to give you my undivided attention. I would appreciate if you gave me your undivided attention. Even again, if the conversation's not going well, end it nicely,
Right.
kindly, right?
There's one exception to this rule of eye contact. And the exception is when you have a 2-year-old playing in dirt and she is so happy that you're like, It's fine. I'm just going to tell this person I'm chatting with. I keep looking over here because she's happy and content, but I'm listening to you." That is the exception to the rule. That's when your
Absolutely.
eyes can go all over, right? I just did
I
that
think
last night at
children,
baseball.
yes.
That's why I thought about it. I was like, I am 100% tuned into this conversation. I am listening to you. But McKinley is happy right now, and I have to keep an eye on her because she's quite far away.
Yes, exactly. Just
Yeah.
again, going back to labeling what it is that you're doing so they
Yep.
understand that we are doing two things at the same time. And one thing I learned in real estate school is God gave you two ears and one mouth. And as silly as that sounds and as cheesy as it is such a good reminder that we're here to listen. You can learn more when you listen. If you're always just waiting to talk and it's always talking about yourself, you're literally learning nothing. And no offense, you might think that you're bringing value, but you might not always be bringing value.
Can I get an amen? Like, is anybody else listening right now being like, "Amen, clap, clap." Like, that is gold. That is so gold. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about, because one thing I know that especially people who are in a like level up season, or like me for example, I moved back to Arizona. I was gone for almost a decade, and some people that know me here may know an old version of me. So making new friends, let's get into like that topic. Like, how do we make new friends, and what are some tips we can give our listeners to make that uncomfortable process a bit more attractive?
You go. I'm trying to think of how I want to word mine.
Sure. So, I mean, one of the first things is like you have to be willing to take the first step. It is something that takes action. So you're not just going to get new friends that are on your level or are doing things or are doing, hopefully, you're looking for friends that are doing bigger things than you, especially if you're looking for growth. But it is absolutely important that you put yourself out there. So, like, for example, I am definitely looking for new business besties. I love entrepreneurial friends. And at this conference I just went to, one of the things I said on my hot mic moment was, I'm looking for new business girlfriends, and that just put it out there. And some people that didn't say that came up and talked to me because that's what they were looking for too. They didn't say it. Right. So be willing to take the first step is a good one.
Absolutely. And I like that one. Because usually what you're thinking, somebody else is thinking as well. I would add to that and say going on friend dates. That's a huge one.
Yeah.
It's similar to going on business meetings and having like 30-minute coffees with someone. But when you meet somebody at an event and it's going well and you're like, "Oh my gosh, we should get along." You take Danielle's first step of making this the effort to actually set something up, assuming that they respond, and then you go see each other in person and you see how it goes. And hopefully that exciting vibe continues and then it turns into a bigger friendship, and if it doesn't work, that's okay. You guys saw each other once and it just wasn't a fit.
Yeah. And so I think the big part is like, let's say it was a fit, right? So let's add to that. Like you
Mhm.
still vibed at your lunch or your coffee date. It's also about following through. So just like in dating, you're going to put in the effort because you like someone. You've got to do the same thing when you're trying to make new friends. So if you're like, that was so fun, let's hang out again. No one likes it when the guy doesn't text back and you're waiting for the new plans. Like, be willing to take the initiative still and be like, let's set up our next one. I know our lives get busy, we have things going on. I really enjoyed our time together. It's kind of like dating, but for friends, truly. And if
Oh,
you
yeah.
follow through, then you're actually building on the relationship and you can go further.
And making sure you talk in between. I think
Yeah.
that, one thing that I've adopted into my business, which has overflowed into my personal life, is like, "Hey, I'm thinking of you. I hope you're having a good day."
Yep.
I was taught to do that to 5 people every day. And it just turned into something that, like, when somebody pops in my head, I just text them, "You popped in my head and I'm thinking of you." And then I send a little sweet emoji and they're like, "Oh my gosh, that made my day. Thank you for thinking of me." And the
Yep.
fact that you reached out and you acted on it is very different than just like thinking about them. They have no idea, right? It's just like
Yeah.
a
They
little
can't read your
sweet
thoughts.
nudge. Mhm.
And everybody loves to feel thought of. Like,
Mhm.
let's be honest, everybody loves a text like that. You're like, wow, especially, wow, I know that she's busy and she took time out of her day to like recognize me and say that she was thinking about me. That feels really good. So don't just think it, do it, right? Because no
Yeah,
one's going
it
to read
also
your
gives the
thoughts.
receiver permission to now reach out again in the future. Because I've had people kind of take what I do to them, which is like, "Hey, just thinking of you," text, and they send it back to me. And I think that opens the door to also see who's receptive of what you're doing, right?
Of
Like
that.
maybe
Yeah.
we do go get a coffee or a drink sometime. You don't know what somebody else is going through in their personal life that maybe you don't know, which is why they're not making the effort. But once you can get them like one-on-one intimate time, it becomes a lot more friendly and you're like, "Oh, okay, I understand the way why you are the way you are."
Yeah, I think thoughtfulness goes so far with any relationship type, whether it's romantic, professional, friend based. If you are thoughtful, genuinely thoughtful, not just being thoughtful because people like thoughtfulness, doing it authentically. That goes a really long way. So I think for like making new friends, you got to be willing to take the first step. You've got to follow through, anchor into those shared interests, and show that you can be thoughtful. And that will help you develop friendships and grow your circle and find your people and find your tribe. And it's okay if you're like, maybe you're in a season where you're like, I literally feel like I have no one, or you just moved. That isn't a season forever. As soon as you start putting in some work, you're going to find your people, you're going to find your friends. And don't
Absolutely.
be afraid, like, slide into DMs too. Like, social media is so powerful. Like, I have friends that are like my virtual friends because I'm like, I like their vibe. I like what they're putting out. Like, you can do that too.
Absolutely. And it just takes the effort and you got to break it down like we just did. But the effort is what continues, you know? So
Yeah.
putting the effort in, seeing where it goes. What else do we got on our list?
So let's talk about another scenario that I know I've struggled with in the past. I've heard from others that they have, and it's going to like a wedding or some sort of social event, birthday party, baby shower, bachelorette, whatever it is, whatever the event is, and they know no one. How can we help them? How can we give them some tips where they can build easy connections that way as well?
I just want to give a shout out to anybody who does this because I have done this quite a few times in my life. And again, it just never gets easier. I get like, it's just one of those things, like my 20-something-year-old self would just struggle. But it's one of those things that, okay, I'm going to make some friends there. And you have to be willing to walk around the room. Maybe do a little homework, do a little preparation. Obviously, with social media, you can see who the friends are, you can see who the family members are. So, if you can do a little bit of preparation and understand that when you walk in that room, you know that that's the mom, you've already searched her a little bit. Okay, now what can I talk to her about? That's a great jumping off station. Like, just go for it. We've got something that we can at least talk to, and just that little bit, she's going to feel absolutely honored and flattered that you know about her. She's not going to wonder why or think it's creepy. You're friends with her daughter, son, whoever.
Yeah.
Go for it. Just do a little homework before you go, and that will help you walk in and feel a lot more confident because you will recognize faces in the crowd.
Yeah, totally. And I think that one thing is like own the awkwardness, right? So just be like, okay, I don't know anyone here. And to kind of pull from, like you mentioned, a friend that you love watching interact with people because of how they connect and the magic memory and they remember the names. So something that you can do, and you can always anchor into this, regardless of what type of event it is, a networking event, a wedding, a baby shower, any event, is you can lean into it by going up and saying, hey, I don't know too many people here. So I thought I would introduce myself. Hi, I'm Danielle, and then ask them a question about them. How do you know so and so? That is how you guys got there, and kick off something from there. And that's an easy way to start talking to someone so you're not sitting alone in the corner or being like, "Cool, I'm at this wedding. I have no date, I have no friends," and you're spiraling. Don't spiral. Just go introduce yourself and start up a conversation, and use some of the other tips we gave you with like friend building in these scenarios too.
Absolutely. It's actually not as hard. It's more intimidating, like thinking about it, the fear of it, knowing that you have to walk in alone. It's the thought of it, but once you are in the middle of the experience, it's actually not that bad. And to Danielle's point, walking up to a group and and explaining, "I'm here alone. My name is Lauren." Most people, I have had negative experiences with that, but we're not going to talk about it. Most people will say, "Oh my gosh, feel free, hang out with us, sit with us." And then they start asking you questions because they're trying to get to know you because that group probably has a pretty tight knit. And so they want to bring you in. And now you're a part of this group for the night.
And listen, everyone has been somewhere where they knew no one. So what's really great is like part of connection is finding common ground. So you can literally find common ground in that, in the way that Lauren just described. And now they're going, "Oh my gosh, I remember when I went to such and such and knew no one." And they're like, "I don't want her to feel bad." So they're going to come in with kindness and make you feel a part of the group.
It's amazing how people just open up immediately if you give them the tools to do so. Right? If you're walking around and you got a snarl on your face and you're looking every girl up and down and checking out all their boyfriends, you ain't getting into any group, girl. That is not happening. We're talking about being friendly and being fun and being interested in other people because people want to talk about themselves. So if you ask questions, you're pretty much in.
Yeah. Hotties don't act like that. So if you act like that, you're not a hottie. Sorry.
Side note, when I was just in Europe for 2 weeks, girls didn't do that to each other. Girls
Yeah,
did
it's an
not do
American
that to
thing.
each other. It was very amazing to walk into a restaurant and nobody looked up, and you didn't feel uncomfortable because nobody A, looked at you, and B, they certainly weren't looking you up and down and making you feel,
Sizing you up.
"Oh my gosh." It was a breath of fresh air, I gotta say.
Yeah. Should I tell them you identify as European now after that trip?
Yes, I am European. Thank you.
I love it. I love it. Okay, so we're gonna give you just a couple of questions, like recap some of the questions that you can lean on, and we'll also put them in a guide here soon that you can download from our website. So, some conversation or some questions that you could use in these scenarios would be like, what brought you here today? How do you know the host, bride, or groom? Like I just talked about. What's the most exciting thing you've been working on recently? This is great for like a networking event or something business related. Another favorite of mine in those scenarios is, what is your biggest challenge right now? Because this can uncover a way for you to genuinely help. Like maybe you have the solution to that challenge. And then, what's your favorite way to spend your free time is a really good one. And what's been the highlight of your week so far? Those are all great questions to kickstart a genuine conversation.
And they're
Any others you
different.
want to add?
My favorite is what are your priorities right now? That's a great question. Um, a silly one, which I learned at a networking event, is this guy said that when you don't know anybody or you want to start the conversation off in a totally different way and somebody says, "How are you?" You give a number. You're like, I'm actually like an 8.8 today. And the person's gonna be like, "I'm sorry, what?" And then it just is like totally
Yeah.
breaks the ice, and you've got this conversation going now on like why you are the way you are because you're thinking about it genuinely, like, "Oh, I'm like a 6.3 maybe. I don't know. What are you?" Like if you act like it's normal, they're like, "I'm very confused right now." It's a
Well,
cool
and
way
it's
to
like
just
it's
break the
different,
ice.
right? When people are like, "Oh, hey, how are you?" They're expecting you to be like, "Good, how are
"Good, how
you?"
are you?"
Right? So
Meh.
give a different response. Like, even think of those. That's a really great preparation tip, actually, is to think about like, what are the common responses and how can mine be different?
Absolutely. We wanna stand out. We want
Mhm.
without being overwhelming to the room, charismatic to the room, taking over the room. You wanna be classy and elegant, but still memorable.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. So I truly believe that you become the most interesting person in the room when you are the most interested. Right? So keys to becoming the most interesting person in the room, let's give some, like we've already talked through some of them, but let's like group them. What's one you think is a key to being the most interesting?
Asking questions in an authentic manner.
Absolutely. And I think listening, like we already touched on this a little bit. So listening more than you speak, right? Can we get another amen for that great
Yeah.
analogy you gave us? A freaking men. And then finding something that excites them. So when you're listening intently, they will usually share something that's going on in their life that they're excited about, energized by, a trip that's coming up, their kid, got accepted to this college, they just closed this deal, they're waiting on a deal, and anchor into that if you're struggling to find questions to keep the conversation alive.
Absolutely. There's like so much that people have to offer. Everybody has their own story and their own journey. And when you can meet a whole bunch of new people, which I would say is actually the benefit and the positive of showing up somewhere alone, you have the advantage of getting to know all these people. And they might share something with you that you didn't even think of, or you're like, that's a good idea. I'm actually going to take that.
Yep.
You just learn more. You didn't go in your group and you're stuck in your group and it's just going to be kind of the same Groundhog's Day fun night, right? Like you actually are, they might share something and you're going, okay, I've never even thought about that before. And then it actually turns into a learning conversation.
Yeah, and growth happens from it. So I think to be the most interesting, you have to really walk into any room, any event, any situation going, what can I learn from the people I'm going to connect with? That your main objective is connection. Because if you're walking in being like, how am I going to present myself? What are the things that I want to say? You should have those things prepared for like a business related something. But if I promise you, if you try this and you go to the next event, and you go in with, my goal is connection, you will have a completely different experience if you are super intentional about that. right? So I think to kind of wrap us up, what we want to make sure that you know is that at the end of the day, connecting with others, it doesn't have to be hard or overwhelming. You can lean on the tools and the tips that we shared with you. And whether you're trying to make new friends, build new business connections, lean into connection and connection authentically. Authentic connection is what we want to leave you with.
Yes, hotties, we always want you to do what feels good, what aligns, and what resonates. So we will see you next time.
Ta ta.